Hi there. Welcome to the While You Wait podcast, where it's all about helping women just like you learn about the bladder while you're waiting for your appointment with that specialist. Each week, I'll combine science, medicine, and common sense so you can learn, become empowered, and get started on your journey to dryness. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boyles, a board-certified urogynecologist. Let's get started. Hi there. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about 3 different ways that you can help improve your stress urinary incontinence. So stress urinary incontinence is leaking with coughing, sneezing, exercise, and laughing. And it's so common. And there are lots of different products out there that can help. So today I've put together snippets from 3 different interviews that I've done. One is on the Leva pelvic health system, which is to help improve your pelvic floor muscle strength. One is on the Inovo, which is a set of shorts that can also help improve your pelvic floor strength. And one is on the Uresta. And the Uresta is a pessary that can help with stress urinary incontinence. There are full episodes on each one of these products if you're interested, and you can look for that in the show notes. Let's go ahead and let's get started. Let's talk to Dr. Mandy Pulliam about the Leva pelvic floor health system and what it can do for you.
We have the Leva pelvic health system, and it's a couple of things. One is it's an app that contains a ton of education about how to control your bladder. And in a few months, we'll actually have additional information about how to control your bowels. And so there are lots of videos and educational materials, some quizzes and all that sort of stuff. But also there's what we call the Leva wand. And that's a wand. It's sort of a small tampon-sized wand that gets placed in the vagina for 2.5 minutes of exercise twice a day. And when you place the wand, it connects to the app on your phone so that you can watch the exercises and really learn and understand whether you're doing the exercises correctly, and also watch as you progress and improve in your ability to do them. The final thing then is that we have a coaching team that connects via phone call or text to help with technical support, but also to help with the kind of support you need if you have a question about how things are going, if you need some support and encouragement so that you adhere to the program. And that coaching lasts for about 12 weeks. And then the final thing is this is a prescription device. So what that means is you have to interact with your healthcare provider to get the device. And also, as you're using it and going through the program, information then gets reported back to your clinician about how you're doing. So they can keep track of things with you and follow along, making sure that as you improve, they support you. And if you don't improve, that they can provide you with next steps if you need them.
How is this device different from what's out there?
There's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, if you do an Amazon search, there's tons of stuff. And I'll say a few things. I mean, one is that the way in which our product shows what you're doing in terms of exercise is unique. We use a thing called accelerometers, which basically is just a motion sensor that shows what happens when you actually are lifting your pelvic floor and squeezing your pelvic floor. So you can see that you're doing your exercises properly. Also, you can see if you're doing them improperly and learn to correct. So that's different from the way most of the other devices out there show you how to do the exercises. But also, and I think this is important, we have a lot of published data in respected medical journals that show the value of using our product. So personally, one of the things that I'm committed to is providing women with products that not only do we say, look, these are great, they're going to work, but we also have proven it by credible research. And I would say that we have more credible research than pretty much any product out there that you'll find.
Yeah. And I think, being able to see how the muscles are moving is really important. And I think that, it may be something that a lot of women haven't thought about, but with traditional peri trainers, they're looking at pressure, right? And you can't really tell if you're contracting or bearing down, right? And so when you use those, you could be using it completely incorrectly, but getting feedback from it that makes you think you're doing it correctly and not realize that.
Right. And it's a challenge to be misguided. I mean, I think it's hard enough to do those exercises properly anyway, because you can't see the muscles. So you really rely on that information to guide whether you're doing them properly or not. And one of the most common sort of improper performances of those exercises is actually bearing down. That's the opposite of what really you want to do. But you're right, those pressure sensors identify that as an increase in pressure, whereas a motion-based device will show that you're pushing down instead of pulling upward.
Yeah. Have you gotten any feedback about twice a day?
Sometimes women ask if they can do their exercises twice a day all at once. So 5 minutes in the morning as opposed to twice a day. And,
Yeah.
we really haven't researched that, but in general, there's no reason that if that's what works for you, you shouldn't do it. I think the more important thing is to do them regularly. Most of our research shows that people use it on average twice a day in the research to get the results. And so occasionally people skip a day. I mean, something happens or you go on vacation or whatever, but generally twice a day for 8 to 12 weeks is what will achieve results.
Yeah. And what do women say about the product?
So
What
I
kind of
think,
feedback have you gotten?
yeah. So actually, there are a couple different ways that we look at what women say. I mean, sometimes women call and talk with us, and they talk with our coaches to talk about how this device has been helpful. And I think a couple of things come through. One is that women feel confident about doing exercises properly because they're getting this guidance on a regular basis. Another is that they do see results. We learn of a lot of women who have seen life-changing results, and actually another thing that we do is we collect survey results from everyone who uses the product, just so we can understand whether or not the women who use the product are actually improving. And if we had a problem, we could tweak our program, whether that's the coaching or the product itself. So we see a lot of good feedback from women about success stories and how that's helped to change their lives, both in terms of stress incontinence, urgency incontinence, or mixed incontinence, which is just a combination of the two.
Of the both, yeah. Do you get specific feedback about the coaching? I mean, I think the coaching is just such an important aspect of it, right? That accountability piece, having someone that you can call and ask questions of.
In general, women love it. I mean, there's occasionally someone that says, "Don't bother me," and we honor that. Some women prefer to have phone calls, and they really develop quite a close relationship with the coach. Other women prefer to communicate by texting, but either way, we try to accommodate whatever the preferences are of the woman using the product. And it's definitely a unique relationship. I think, we have pelvic floor physical therapists who help to train our coaches as they're providing encouragement and support. And so we try to do a really great job of helping to educate women and support them as they go through the program.
Do you have any group support? I mean, I think a lot of women really want peers who are going through the same thing. And so I'm wondering if you provide that at all.
So we haven't yet. We would like to, and I think that's definitely on the drawing board in terms of things that we'll do down the road. And
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that one of the challenges about this problem is that many women think that they're the only one that has urinary incontinence, when the
Right.
reality is, over
It's
50% of
everyone.
women in the country experience it at any age. I mean, it's not just older ladies; it's young women as well. And so we'd love to put people together in a group, and I think we're working through some of the patient privacy things and those sorts of things that will allow us to do that.
Yeah, and obviously it would be something you could opt into. I mean, I think some women
Absolutely.
really love that idea, and other women, it's, kind of a horrific idea and just the worst idea ever.
Right. Agree.
Just depending on, how much of a sharer you are. So yeah. So once you're done with the 12 weeks, then what? I mean, are you cured? Are you done? No more
Uh,
exercises?
so that's a
Such a
great
loaded
question.
question.
Well, it is a loaded question. One, because it's important, but the other, because there's really not a lot of information in
Right.
the medical literature about what happens. And so, again, another thing we're committed to, but we've just published another paper looking at this research study we did. We compared women who use Leva to women who have just done pelvic floor muscle exercises at home with a sheet of paper to help guide their exercise. And what we found is that in our research study, 8 weeks of using Leva right now endures in terms of the symptom improvement for at least a year. And we have 18-month and 24-month data, and that's almost ready. So we're excited about learning that, because I think it helps us to understand, if you do an 8-week intensive program, one of the things we think is that maybe women are learning to use those muscles again in their
Right.
regular daily lives. And so they can then go forward and use them, as they're meant to be. We'll see what happens over time. I mean, at 2 years, that's a long time to go without any directed exercise. And we may at that point find that, women need a touch up or a little bit of a repeat effort. But at this point, we know that for 1 year anyway, those results hold.
My full interview with Dr. Pulliam is season 1, episode 9. So you can look for that if you're interested. So now we're going to transition and talk about the Inovo, which is a set of shorts that can help stimulate muscle contraction, and my interview with Dr. Ruth Maher. And this episode can be found in season 1, episode 26. So, can you tell us a little bit about Inovo and what that is?
Sure, it's a neuromuscular electrical stimulation device, but it's different than the conventional ones that women were typically using like anal or vaginal probes or even surface electrodes. And this has 8 embedded electrodes, and the stimulating surface area is 1,200 centimeters square, which is a lot more than put on a vaginal probe because the space that the probe occupies is quite small. And there's also smart algorithm programming into it using multiple paths. And what that means is that you reduce the fatigability associated with single fixed pathways, say a TENS machine using just 2 electrodes where the current flows from just one electrode to the other, and it depolarizes the same nerves all the time. Well, the nerves get tired and the muscle isn't recruited as well in that type of setup. So here I have a thing called multipath stim, which has some programming, and the stimulus or the current is bounced off the 8 electrodes in a variety of patterns, multipath, to maximize the contraction and also reduce the fatigability associated with regular NMES or neuromuscular electrical stimulation. The other thing is the size of the stimulating surface area, 1,200 centimeters squared, means you can put a lot more current in because those pelvic floor muscles are quite deep in the pelvis. And because I'm going through the glutes and the outer hips, the current has to go through a lot of tissues, and current doesn't flow in a straight line. It'll go take the path of least resistance. And there's a lot of adipose around that area. So you have to put in a lot of current. And because the surface is so large with the electrodes, it reduces the current density. So you can put a lot more current in to target the floor muscle.
So, they're shorts that you put on, and then that short has a current in it, and the current stimulates the muscles. I don't think a lot of people realize that that's how muscles work, right? That there's actual an electrical stimulus. And then when you put on the shorts, how long do you have to wear them?
We advertised 30 minutes, but in my early studies, 20 minutes seemed sufficient. But that was with a small sample size and with quite lean individuals. And we all know that a high BMI is also associated with stress and incontinence, because if you have a lot of adipose around your tummy when you're coughing and sneezing, that weight pushes on the bladder, which then pushes on the incompetent pelvic floor muscles. So we extended that to 30 minutes based on a study that was done in Germany a couple of years ago. So 30 minutes, 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be consecutive days.
Okay. And then for how many weeks?
12 weeks.
And when do you normally see women experiencing an improvement?
The average is within 4 weeks, but I've seen within 2 weeks. Yeah. And the reason is because we all think it's just strength, but it's not really. It's timing of the contraction is imperative, because the superficial pelvic floor, the issue of cavernosum and bulbous casinum muscles are very important. It's not just the levator ani. And they've been shown to have a lot of fast twitch fibers, like the sprinter fibers. And they have to close under times when you cough or sneeze or exercise, because that increases your intra-abdominal pressure. So they have to come on really quickly to close the holes to stop you leaking. So I designed Inovo to replicate that in that fast sort of reflex twitch. So it's only on for about 5 seconds, 4.5 to 5 seconds, to train the neurological system to come on. And if you know anything about training muscles, you can see strength strength increases very early on. And it's not because the muscle has hypertrophied, it's because you've upregulated the nervous system. And I'm just in September, I'm going to present a paper at the International Incontinence Society showing that 5 minutes of Inovo significantly improved women's ability to contract the pelvic floor. And it was done in all women that couldn't contract. It was just a small sample size, but my effect size was very large. So just after 5 minutes, which is 30 contractions with adequate rest between each one, they were all able to do a pelvic floor contraction. So it looks like it enhances your kinesthetic awareness or proprioception as well, which is fantastic because it teaches you how to do the contraction.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions is, do you have to know how to do a contraction to use Inovo? But you're saying no, and it actually improves your ability to contract your pelvic floor and increases that
Correct.
awareness.
Yes, it does. Because it's a very odd contraction. The muscles in there don't move a joint. Like if you're teaching a bicep curl, most people are looking at what I'm doing and not listening to what I'm saying. And those muscles don't contract a joint. So it's very difficult to explain how to recruit them. We use cues like, imagine you're cutting off the flow of urine, or you're trying to stop gas passing. But invariably, people will use other muscles, or they just can't get it, or they'll do a bearing down maneuver, which is something you don't want them to do.
Right. It feels much more abstract, right? Because it's just hard to see and feel that muscle move. So then, you do your 12 weeks, and what about maintenance? I mean, if you're learning to use your pelvic floor, and you're realizing how to do those contractions, do you need to continue to use it in a maintenance way, or do you kind of figure that out on your own and don't need it anymore?
I recommend once a week. I always recommend that when women learn how to do the contraction, they do the contraction while the device is on, because it sort of reinforces that good motor behavior. So they should continue doing the Kegels themselves, or the pelvic floor exercises themselves. I don't like to see anybody dependent on anything like you would a drug. But once a week helps, because you're recruiting a lot more motor units with NMES than you would volitionally. And that's sort of a protective thing. You're not supposed to recruit all motor units because they fatigue quickly. So it's sort of like a booster. It re-enhances their ability to know how to do the contraction.
Okay.
So that's what I recommend anyway.
So based on what you said, does this work less well for women who are heavier or maybe carry more weight in their hips?
I would have to say, not for heavy around the hips, but around the tummy, definitely. Probably those with a BMI of close to 40.
Okay.
The issue with research is you always look for homogeneous groups. And the research that was done for the FDA clearance was, I think, 35 was the cutoff, 35 or less for BMI. Women heavier than that have been using and getting results, but they're not as good as the lighter women or the leaner women.
Well, and weight loss does help. I mean, you can always work on that as well.
The other thing I'd say is they probably don't get to the threshold to get a contraction. A lot of people will think the glute contraction or the buttock contraction is the pelvic floor contraction, but it's not. That's the initial contraction, because we have to go through the glutes to get to the pelvic floor. And the glutes are part of a synergy. There's two synergies for contracting the pelvic floor. Either it's an isolated contraction or a synergy with other muscles, according to where the muscles are on the homunculus. So a lot of people initially don't get to that threshold. And this is how I describe. They should feel the symmetrical butt contraction. And then as they turn the intensity up and get used to it, they'll feel it in their anal or rectal area. Then they turn it up a little bit more, and they'll feel it along the perineal area or high up between your legs. And you feel tapping first, but that's not a tetanic contraction, as we call it, or full contraction. It's just like little twitches. Then you have to turn it up a little bit higher. And it's usually between 55 and 65 for most women before they get lift off. And I wish I'd had a photograph of their faces when they get lift off, because they're like, that's an odd sensation. Because it's a huge contraction. It feels like somebody's just pulling everything up inside you.
Well, and it's unlike anything you've ever felt before, right? I mean, those muscles don't usually contract that strongly.
I wanted to give you an update on my experience with the Inovo. I was never able to feel a pelvic floor contraction with the pair that I had. I did some troubleshooting with Ruth, and I was able to get the Inovo to work for me so that I could feel a pelvic floor contraction. But in order to do this, I had to get a larger size, which the company was very happy to give me. I had to use it without underwear. I had to turn the stimulation up to 64, and this resulted in a really strong butt contraction that I could always feel with the pelvic floor contraction. And I had to be really careful to place the electrodes in the right spot. So the bottom pair had to be right underneath my butt, and the top pair had to be really, really low on my butt. This resulted in a little bit of sagging in the actual short component of it, and that was not intuitive to me. I thought they should be stretched tight. But making sure the electrodes were in the right spot resulted in a contraction. And I could only feel it when I was lying down. When I was standing up, I couldn't feel it. So in my troubleshooting, these were the things that I had to do. I had to make sure the electrodes were in the right place. I had to have the right size. I had to be lying down, and I had to not be wearing underwear. And then I could feel a pelvic floor contraction. So I think finding the right size and the right fit and putting them on correctly is so very important. And it may take a little bit of troubleshooting on your part if you're interested in trying the Inovo shorts. And I would encourage you to be patient if it doesn't work the first time. Be sure to correspond with the company and they can help you troubleshoot this. But with these steps, you should be able to feel a pelvic floor contraction. So good luck to you. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to talking about the Uresta. And the Uresta is an incontinence pessary. Sometimes incontinence pessaries get a really bad reputation, but they can be super helpful for women who are leaking during specific activities or who don't mind wearing the pessary all of the time. The whole interview that I did is in season 1, episode 32, but let's go ahead and let's learn a little bit more about pessaries.
So Uresta is, like you mentioned, a pessary for stress incontinence. The biggest difference between Uresta and traditional pessaries is that it is actually a self-managed and self-fitted solution for women. So like you mentioned, if you are getting a pessary today, you would go to your physician, they would fit you for it, and then you would go home. We were actually invented by a urogynecologist in Canada. And what he was seeing is that women were either having a hard time managing their pessary on their own. So a lot of them were having difficulty taking it in and out. Some women were either getting fitted and then feeling like the pessary that they had wasn't quite the right fit for them. And then, just generally waiting long periods of time. So he wanted something that women could, fit themselves, a true at-home solution. So how he first kind of came around to this idea was, how can I make it really easy for women to take in and out? So if you've ever seen, if you Google Uresta and take a look at it, a lot of women actually say it sort of looks like a pacifier. But that shape is super intentional. So, the top of it has a tapered point and it just helps, insert and makes it easy for women to insert. And then it has a handle. And then it comes with a fitting kit. So the idea behind it was really just to give kind of women the power and the control and make it very easy for them to manage and doesn't ultimately require that physician intervention.
Yeah, I mean, those fitting appointments aren't necessarily hard, but, I think it's something that a lot of women, if they can handle it on their own, they would prefer to do that on their own, right? Rather than someone trying different pessaries. So can you talk a little bit about how you do that at home and how you figure out what size you need? Because they do come in different sizes.
Yeah, so Uresta actually, so it comes in 5 different sizes. Actually, it's size 2 to 6. We had a size 1. We actually discontinued it. But basically, how we help women find their initial fit is we sell a starter kit. So the starter kit includes our 3 middle sizes. So sizes 3, 4, and 5. Based on clinical studies, this will work for 80% of women. So if you are trying Uresta for the first time, we recommend starting with the middle size in the kit. And you're essentially looking for 4 things when you try Uresta. So of course, you want your leaks to either be significantly, reduced or have stopped. If they haven't, you're going to want to try a larger size. The second thing you want to make sure is that you can still urinate with Uresta inserted, right? So that's very important. And then it should be comfortable. So you shouldn't feel any pressure once it's inserted. And then, of course, it should be staying in place. So those are the 4 main things to look for.
How often do you have or do you hear from women that they can't urinate with the Uresta in place?
Honestly, not that often. I would say like when women are having trouble, we usually recommend that size down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually they're able to get relief. And I didn't mention this, but our smallest size, the size 2, and then our largest size, the size 6, they aren't in the starter kit, but if you've tried those sizes in the kit, and we'll just send you that additional size for free.
Okay. That's good to know. I didn't realize that you sent them for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, that trouble emptying, I mean, that happens with all pessaries. And, the minute you take it out, you should be able to pee without any problem. But I think it's a little bit alarming for women when they hear that. Do you get feedback? I mean, I have a little bit of an opinion about this, but do you get feedback about the appearance of the Uresta the first time people see it?
Absolutely. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I've done several pop-up, retail events in Canada. And one thing I didn't cover, we're actually over the counter in Canada, but in the US we're prescription, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But so I have a lot of women actually come up and feel it and touch it, and they go, "Whoa, like that looks really big, or that looks really uncomfortable." And it's firm, right? Like it's a very firm product. And I think a lot of women, there's a lot of women now that are using menstrual cups. So they're like, "Oh, I totally get like the concept of it," but they're used to that menstrual cup being squishy. And with Uresta, it's not. But it's because the firmness of it is what's applying the support, right? Like that's how it functions. But, I definitely get that feedback. But you know what? Once women try it, like I just like, I'm like, give it a go, start with a smaller size. And the amount of women who will leave a review or will message me after and say, "Wow, it's surprisingly comfortable." Like a tampon, or a menstrual cup, once you've inserted it, you shouldn't feel it.
Yeah.
And your rest is really no different. But yes, there is that initial, "Oh my God, that looks really big."
So that's exactly what I was hoping you would say and what I wanted you to say. So, when I do prescribe them in the office, I like to give the Uresta. I think it works really well. But the first time we got them in the office, I had that same reaction, right? Where I thought, "Oh my gosh, that is so big and firm. That looks super, super uncomfortable." And I actually took one of the starter kits home and tried them because I just had to know how comfortable it really was. And I would tell you that my personal experience was exactly what you said, where I thought, "No way, this is going to work. This looks like it's going to be so uncomfortable." Well, let me rephrase. I always thought it would work, but I thought, wow, putting this in is going to be super uncomfortable. So I tried it, and it is exactly like you say, if you just kind of push past it and try it, once it's inside, it doesn't hurt. It's easy to put in and take out. But I think the initial reaction is, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding me." Right. And
Right.
when I show it to women in the office, because we have some samples that I show people before I prescribe it, I kind of have to walk them through that disbelief period where I'm like, I know, just try it. I think this will be a great thing for you. But I think that there is that initial reaction, right? So I think it's just important to move past that.
No, it's interesting that even that you had that reaction. And I've talked to OBGYNs, pelvic floor physios that have, will prescribe and fit pessaries, and they've showed me some of their pessaries, right? And their other pessaries are quite large, right? Like they're quite daunting too. But I think the difference is like you have the appointment, you're there, and versus going home and taking it out of the box and going, "Oh my God, this looks really big," right? And I do have women buy it and then message me and say, "Oh, I just haven't worked up the confidence yet to try it."
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think there's a little bit of a mindset. And what I would tell you happens in the office is when I fit someone with a pessary, I will show them the pessary, but I almost always show them a very small one that I don't really think we're going to use because I think it takes a little bit of time to get used to that, right? So I show the smaller one. I say, this is the shape. This is what I'm going to use, and I'll fit you for one. And then I fit them for one. They say, "Oh yeah, that's comfortable." And then I show it to them, and then there's a little bit of disbelief. I can't believe that wasn't uncomfortable, and blah blah blah. But the pessaries that we use in the office are not quite as firm in general, right? And they're a little bit more flexible. Some of them you can bend to put in place. It just has a little bit of a different feel. And I think, just like you said, it is different than a tampon. It's different than a menstrual cup. And so you just have to believe a little bit and try it and just anticipate that your first reaction might be, "Wow, this this doesn't seem quite right."
Okay, so I hope that was helpful information for you. I really like all three of these products, and I know a lot of women who have used the different products and who have gotten a lot of help from them. And the important thing that I want you to know is just that there are a lot of different things out there. There are a lot of different things that you can try and that will help you improve. So let's get started and let's make your leaking better.
Thanks for listening. If you want more information about me or my online work, check out my website at www.thewomensbladderdoctor.com.